BlackRock could flip the entire crypto game upside down today, but instead they're sitting on their hands. And no, it's not because they hate XRP, the truth is way spicier. Picture this, I'm halfway through my first cup of coffee, scrolling the news like it's my personal gossip column, when I noticed yet another headline about an XRP ETF filing. Number 15 if you're keeping score at home. You've got Grayscale, they filed, Bitwise have filed, even 𝗕𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗃 who only really shows up at the class reunion every other year, has filed. But BlackRock, the 10-ton elephant wearing an iShares hoodie, hasn't moved an inch. And yet that kind of got me wondering, why is it that the biggest kid on the block refuses to play the ETF game that everyone else is crowding into? So I started doing some digging, and the rabbit hole felt like pulling at a loose thread that just kept on going. Right? And it turns out that BlackRock is already rolling in success with its Bitcoin and Ethereum products. Now, their iShares Bitcoin Trust is now north of $30 billion in assets. And yeah, that is with a B. And their shiny new Ethereum fund sprinted past $1 billion in just 8 weeks. So to put it bluntly, when you're all kind of already hosting the two biggest parties in town, the temptation to throw a third, especially for an asset as controversial as XRP, it doesn't set your pulse racing. I mean, would you leave a table where you're winning every single hand to go and try your luck on the slot machines? Well, neither would BlackRock. But that's only the first layer of the onion, right? The real mess is the regulatory salad. So even though Ripple and the SEC finally dropped their mutual appeals, the courtroom equivalent of agreeing to disagree essentially, the judge hasn't actually slammed the gavel on the final decision just yet. Now for most of us, that's just a technicality, but for a conservative kind of juggernaut like BlackRock, technically, on technicality, might as well be written in red letters, right? Remember, the SEC, they called XRP a possible security for years. So every compliance officer at BlackRock still sees in big kind of neon letters and lights the words "proceed with caution." And, well, it's not just the lawsuit, right? BlackRock actually uses an internal scorecard before greenlighting any new ETF. So let's think about it like the world's kind of pickiest dating app profile. Liquidity, institutional demand, squeaky clean legal clarity, all need to be hitting certain thresholds. Right? Bitcoin and Ethereum swipe right on all three, but XRP, it's close. Definitely kind of a glow up potential, but still, right, shy of that kind of perfect score. So imagine the asset class, right, equivalent of being maybe stuck at an 89.4% when the cutoff is actually, for an A, is potentially 90. It's absolutely brutal, right? And we've got to talk about patience as well. BlackRock's strategy often looks less like a kind of sprinter dash and more like a kind of chess kind of grandmaster sliding a pawn. Now, their vibe is, let Grayscale sprint out. Let Frankel Templeton make their awkward small talk with the SEC and, well, just kind of watch from the sidelines. It's not laziness, it's actually calculated. They're kind of gauging how regulators react to everyone else's XRP proposals. Now, if the SEC starts handing out rejections like parking tickets, well, BlackRock loses nothing. Now, if approvals kind of rain down, BlackRock kind of, waltzes in, files last, and still captures the lion's share of assets because, well, they're BlackRock. Now, I know what you're thinking, but Nick, didn't BlackRock file back in 2023? And I'm here to say, the old infamous fake filing. It was actually November of 2023, and someone cooked up a bogus document that looked legit enough to fool half of crypto Twitter for an entire afternoon. Now, when the kind of smoke cleared, and BlackRock said, "Oh, that wasn't us," it kind of left a very bad taste in their kind of corporate mouth, right? Nothing torpedoes a firm's appetite for risk faster than being dragged into a rumor that they didn't start. Now that little fiasco still echoes today, like showing up to your own surprise birthday party guest list, but nobody actually invited you. So let's go ahead and zoom out, right? Bitcoin and Ethereum, they still dominate the dance floor, right? Gobbling up trading volume like there's an all-you-can-eat buffet. XRP, while growing, is still the underdog in terms of liquidity. And the big institutions love liquidity the way that cats love laser pointers. Now, if you can't get in and out quickly with massive positions, they will hesitate. Sure, XRP has outperformed Ethereum by 262% since last November, right? Let's clap for that. But in raw, cold dollar terms, it's still kind of trailing Ethereum's market cap by about $74 billion. That's the size of a small nation's GDP. So you can see why BlackRock might glance at the gap and say, let's wait a little bit longer. Plus, and this is crucial, BlackRock doesn't launch a product unless their own clients are banging on the door screaming, "Take my money." Now, the analysts who run the XRP investing page suspects that clambering simply isn't going to be loud enough yet. And yes, Bitwise's CIO, swears clients are hungry for XRP exposure. But BlackRock's crowd may be a little bit more conservative, right? They are the folk who prefer a Tesla to a DeLorean. Sure, it's futuristic, but only once that they know that it won't explode in their driveway. Now, let me share a quick story because this hit me personally. Back in December, I bumped into an old college buddy who works as a kind of portfolio analyst at one of BlackRock's institutional clients. Now, we're kind of talking about football weekend plans, and then he drops, "I keep getting calls about Bitcoin allocations, ETH too. XRP, not so much yet." So when I kind of probe why, he kind of shrugged. The legal stuff kind of scares them. They want clarity. Now, there it was, straight from the horse's mouth. Now, until the lawsuit is 100% wrapped up with a bow, big whales are content to keep XRP on their watch list, not on their balance sheet. But here is where it gets really interesting. BlackRock's track record is to wait, study the market, and then strike with a product that hoovers up capital like a Dyson on steroids. Now, remember how they were kind of fashionably late to the Bitcoin ETF party. Everyone thought Grayscale had the field locked in, right? Then iShares IBIT showed up and smashed AUM records like it was nothing. So don't interpret their silence as kind of a disinterest. It's more like the kind of calm before the D-Day kind of drops the bass, right? Or you just know something big is coming. And yes, while we're here, quick reminder, if you want to kind of swap theories, memes, and the occasional spicy rumor about XRP and everything else under the crypto sun, jump into our free crypto Discord server. The link is hanging out in the description down below. The conversation runs 24/7 and the coffee is kind of metaphorically bottomless. Okay, so back to the story. Another wrinkle. Public perception, right? After that kind of fake XRP filing went viral, BlackRock had to deny involvement publicly. They kind of loathe unnecessary headlines. It's kind of like getting kind of snapped, kind of sneaking into a movie theater, right? You might not care, but your reputation sure does, right? They want their brand mentioned next to, decisive victories, not half-baked rumors. All of this kind of sets up the real cliffhanger then, right? Is BlackRock playing the longest game in crypto? Right, the analysts, they think so. Remember Nate, from the ETF store? Well, he predicted BlackRock might still file, just not until Ripple's court drama is wrapped up tighter than a Christmas present. And the second that gavel drops and XRP gets the kind of regulatory gold star, BlackRock could pivot faster than your cousin pivoting away from politics talk at Thanksgiving. So let's stack the cards then, right? On one side, you've got regulatory uncertainty, a faint kind of echo from the kind of fake filing scandal, and a liquidity threshold that XRP hasn't fully conquered. On the other side, you've got a token that's closed a 262% performance gap with Ethereum in under a year, a community screaming for mainstream adoption, and an ecosystem that, frankly, battle hardened, right? And if you kind of think BlackRock is ignoring that math, you should be thinking again. So let me lay out one possible timeline then. Imagine Ripple settles everything with the SEC by year's end. Clean bill, no leftover appeals. That alone could light the liquidity fuse, because suddenly every compliance desk that's kind of been tiptoeing around XRP can finally get sign-off. Trading volumes spikes, institutional kind of desks receive fresh mandates, and crucially, BlackRock's clients start dialing in. Where's my XRP exposure? Now, you know the rest, right? iShares XRP Trust press release, ticker XRPT, or whatever catchy label marketing kind of cooks up, and a flood of capital, and us scrambling to interpret the kind of impact on the price charts. It's a bit like waiting for the final brick in a Lego castle, right? The foundation is almost there. Liquidity, global remittance use cases, derivatives rails. But until the last piece kind of clicks, the castle is technically incomplete. Now, BlackRock never sells incomplete castles, right? They wait for the ribbon cutting ceremony, then invite everyone inside. There's also the strategic advantage. By letting smaller issuers enter first, BlackRock gets a kind of free peek at how the SEC rules on XRP ETFs. Call it kind of the canary in the regulatory coal mine. Now, if the SEC grants approvals, BlackRock can mimic the kind of filings, fix any kind of wrinkles, and price their product aggressively. If the SEC denies them, well, BlackRock shrugs and avoids the bad press. Heads, they kind of win, tails, they don't lose. Now, I promised the spicy part, right? And here it is, right? Some analysts whispered that BlackRock's delay is also just a subtle kind of negotiation tactic. Picture BlackRock kind of sliding up to Ripple behind closed doors. Show us concrete institutional demand and bulletproof custody solutions, and maybe we'll pull the trigger. Now, Ripple, hungry to unlock Wall Street scale liquidity, benefits from the carrot, right? Or that particular carrot, right? It kind of pressures them to keep forging partnerships and pushing adoption. So in a kind of weird symbolic dance, BlackRock's hesitation could be catalyzing Ripple to kind of tick every single box even faster. And remember that market share argument? Well, Bitcoin and Ethereum, they remain the kind of Coke and Pepsi of the crypto world, right? XRP is more like Dr. Pepper, plenty of fans, but it's not on every single shelf. Now, if I'm BlackRock, I want to see XRP stocked in every institutional fridge before I invest millions into marketing an ETF. We're getting closer, right? Asian corridors, Latin America remittances, on-chain CBDC pilots. And there's still road to cover. So let's step into the climax then. Imagine the SEC drops a surprise statement tomorrow. We're officially classifying XRP as a non-security digital asset. Social media would explode like confetti at midnight. Liquidity through the roof. Institutional FOMO off the charts, and who's perfectly positioned to kind of parachute in with a product that everyone trusts. Exactly, BlackRock. Now that's the plot twist waiting in the wings, and once it happens, the XRP market narrative could pivot overnight from when ETF to how big will this ETF get? And so where does this leave us then? Well, BlackRock's absence from the XRP ETF race isn't a snub. It's a cautious, calculated posture, right? They've already got the crown jewels with Bitcoin and Ethereum, right? They're just not swapping them for something less polished until they're certain that the shine will last. They're weighing liquidity, client demand, public perception, and a court case that still needs its last paragraph. But the second that those kind of variables align, don't be shocked if they file and dominate, because historically, that's exactly their playbook. If you're an XRP holder, I get it, right? It feels like being the kind of talented kid waiting for the kind of veracity kind of coach to notice, right? But progress is progress, outperforming Ethereum, closing the market cap gap, and providing utility beyond speculation, right? The story isn't whether an XRP ETF will happen, it's how soon and how massive it can get once a heavyweight like BlackRock steps in. And hey, while we track every twist and turn together, remember there's a whole crew dissecting this stuff around the clock in our free crypto Discord. Slide in through the link that's in the description down below, bring your hot takes and your cold memes. For now, keep your eyes on regulatory headlines, watch those liquidity charts, and maybe keep a notification alert for any sudden iShares trademark filings. Because trust me, the moment that BlackRock makes a move, it'll be louder than a stadium goal horn.